Fuck. Alright, hey everyone, Owen here. Today we're doing a video that's a little bit different from my other videos. I do not have a script. I'm just going to be talking directly to you. I have some notes I might be referencing from time to time, but this is about a subject I kind of want to talk directly to you about, and I feel like having a really detailed script with comedy cutaway segments would undercut that somewhat, so I'm just going to talk directly to you. There's going to be jump cuts, definitely, because I do not really know how to speak for extended periods of time without losing myself in a vortex of words and meaningless thoughts, but, you know, we'll try to limit that. I'm going to try to leave as much in as I can, because I just want to talk directly to you. Oh, also, I'm not going to do this format regularly. This is going to be bad, I think, and so if you hate it, that's good, I guess, because you're never going to have to deal with it again. If you like it, too bad. Also, you know, maybe you should watch somebody else, because no, please, I'm not that popular. I'm not popular enough to pretend that I don't need you guys. Alright, today we are talking about accountability. That's a concept that you normally hear people talking about right after they've done something really bad, and it's kind of common, I think, for people to posture about how important they think accountability is, and how necessary it is in fan communities and in spaces with people who build these kinds of cults of personality around themselves. But these conversations basically only happen in those circumstances where somebody's trying to cover their ass because they fucked up somehow. And I wanted to get out ahead of that, not because I intend to fuck up. I'm not JonTron. I don't plan upon doing it. But I see it as a fair possibility that it will happen. And so I think it's important not to decide accountability is important in a reactionary way after you fucked up, after something has happened. And you can't decide later, after you've built a community that just kind of kisses your ass all the time for no reason. You can't decide after you've done that you want it to be a place where you and others can be held accountable, because it's been built in a way that's going to prevent that from happening. I think you have to build communities from the ground up in a way that encourages a way of thinking and a way of acting and a way of interacting with the people they are built around that facilitates that kind of accountability. I don't have any delusions that I'm going to become some famous YouTuber or something. I'm not going to pretend I wouldn't like that. It would be cool. It would be very cool. And some people definitely, I don't know if this is true of everyone. Some people definitely say, like, I don't care that much about fame. I don't want to become a famous YouTuber. I'm not necessarily seeking this large audience. And they may or may not be telling the truth. I don't know. It's not my place to try and figure out, like, oh man, are they just pretending? No, that's not my job here. But I can tell you that I would be lying if I said that. If you've got into the place where you are incredibly popular and you have an incredibly large platform, it shouldn't be that at that point you have basically escaped accountability, which is the situation we find ourselves in most of the time. But it's also the case that if you're a small YouTuber, if you have a small platform, small audience, that shouldn't let you exist in a bubble where, you know, people are like, oh, you know, that's kind of fucked up, but we can let it go, or we should move on and not really discuss it because they're just a small YouTuber or whatever. It's kind of a bad idea to let YouTubers or anyone with a small platform to grow up, so to speak, in a bubble in which they are kind of immune from being criticized because of that, because then it develops into the point where you have a large platform, and then it's not that you can't be criticized because people don't want to. It's basically that you can't be because you have that platform and because you have all of these fans now who will defend you. Even if you do fuck up and end up in a situation where you're being criticized, it's not going to come to anything. That's not going to hurt you in any meaningful way. I think a lot of people are very concerned about cancel culture. In fact, I don't think that. I know that. People are making videos all the time, like, in our modern society, anybody can be canceled for anything. Just you wait. You think you can't be canceled? Just you wait. The gay mafia is coming for you. Did you like Beyblades as a child? Fuck you. You're canceled. For the record, I liked Beyblades. In my earlier videos, I would say leave your rebuttals / comments in the comments below or whatever, with the emphasis on rebuttals. And I stopped saying that, not because I don't believe that you should be able to do that, but because I mostly changed the way I do my outros. But I still do believe that. I want to be clear. I mean, if you'll look at my videos, you'll see I never delete critical comments, and as long as they aren't like just basically shit posts, like they aren't contributing anything of value to the conversation. That Dinesh D'Souza one a couple weeks ago, that was pushing it, but I let that stay. No one has really posted anything I thought was like, warranting of being removed. And so I haven't done that, and it's important to know that concept of you should be able to criticize me is not just like the right. I really don't give a shit about whether or not they're criticizing me in my comments, and I do leave it up, but I also don't think that it's meaningful. I think important, meaningful criticism is going to come from people who basically share the same set of beliefs about things that are good in the world, and that, I think that that's really important, is for people to challenge me, even if it's like relatively trivial stuff. Like, I had somebody comment on the politics of Majora's Mask, just kind of combating my assessment of some part of that game. Not even in like an overtly political way, just like, hey man, I think that you maybe, like, I disagree with your interpretation of this. And that was cool. Like, I don't agree with all of the points said there, but it's cool that you can watch a video and then go to the comments and get an alternative opinion. And that doesn't mean you have to, like, immediately be like, oh yeah, fuck you, Owen, like, you're wrong about everything. But, I think that's a very good and healthy thing, in that you guys should criticize me if I fuck up. You should be like, hey man, you fucked up. Because I've talked about people on this channel, notably PewDiePie, who has this just very, very strange fan base. He's obviously beyond criticism to them, but it goes beyond that. Like, it's a very toxic culture. It's also contributed to the development of, like, these weird alt-right kind of sentiments in that fan base. And I'm not saying I think that if no one disagrees with me about the Zelda games, that all of you are going to turn into members of the alt-right. No, I don't think that. But I do not want you to become a bunch of sycophants. And that is a thing I see on the left as well as the right. I think one of the biggest criticisms people typically have of quote-unquote BreadTube is that communities revolve around people and not so much ideas and content styles and issues that people find important to them. And I don't think that it's not okay to think that H-Bomber guy is cool, you know? I think H-Bomber guy is cool. But I do agree with the sentiment that communities should not be based around people as much as they should be based around common interests and ideas. I spent a lot of time over the past several years on internet forums, and one of those experiences involved me becoming friends with this guy who was like significantly older than myself, and this became a very toxic relationship for unrelated reasons. But a thing about this guy was that he attempted to make communities around himself that kind of he was the point of it, and that people's unifying trait in that community should be like/friendship of with him. And obviously this guy did not possess anywhere near the amount of power that someone with a popular YouTube channel such as myself have. But it was an important learning experience for me about what creates a healthy community. And what creates a healthy community is not a community based around a single person, and not a community in which the person at the center of it is considered infallible. He moderated a board, and that was kind of his philosophy there, was that this board and its success were directly tied to him and his presence and active involvement rather than the community itself. That this community was a direct result and based around him, that if you removed that element, it would collapse. And in a way, he was right, you know, because eventually he got fired. And the way that community worked was altered after that. But it wasn't necessarily a bad alteration. In fact, I would argue that it worked better, and in a better capacity, and better for what it was meant to be than it did when it was trying to be a community based around him. And all of that is just to say that a community which encourages accountability for the people at the quote-unquote center of it, or in this case, the person around whose content the community is built, will probably result in a community that looks different from what you generally consider to be a YouTuber community, or a community based around a YouTuber's work, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I would love to never fuck up. I would absolutely love that. It would be awesome. But being a perfect person is not really a long-term strategy that you can use in life. You need to have a contingency plan, so to speak, for when you fuck up. You don't need to necessarily fuck up in a serious way, like in a career-ruining way. But you are going to fuck up at some point, in some minor way probably, or some slightly major way. But regardless of how large that mistake is, you need to know what you're going to do about it, and you need to know what you're going to take away from it. A lot of people really take serious issue with the way that BreadTube, I don't like that term really as a way to describe a broad group of people who make very different styles of content, you know. I think the idea of it as a contiguous thing is kind of problematic. In like a just like, I don't know if that's the best way to describe this. I don't know if this is a very accurate means of categorization. Not in like a, people who say BreadTube should reconsider. I don't really particularly care. And this is not me. Like, this is not something I thought of. Don't think that I am like pretending to have made all of this up, because I didn't. People have been saying this for a long time. Especially people who are hurt by the way BreadTube is structured, as much as it can be structured, but as much as the communities around it are structured, that people who've been hurt by this have talked about it before and have not seen much meaningful response to that. And that's the thing, is that, like, you can say as much as you want about how you think your community should act, and how you think that it's bad when your community acts a certain way, and how you think that, these kinds of fan cultures, especially on the left, are a bad thing. And that's completely valid. Like, you would be correct in saying that. But I do feel like it's often a reactionary thing to say, and that you really can't change your community at that point. And I understand that you do not always have 100% total control over what your community does. But you do have control over the ideas that you present to your community, and the ways that you encourage them to act, and the ways that your content and what you say and do encourages them to act. And you have to build a community that's going to act in a responsible way, that holds people accountable, that does not engage in like dogmatic fandom wars. That's not a thing you just get to decide should happen. And it's also not a thing that's completely out of your control. We talked, I hate to keep referencing the PewDiePie video, but it's my most popular video. So I'm presuming most of you have watched it. But with that video, you could see, and we talked about repeatedly, that PewDiePie and his conduct very, very directly contributed to the way his community operated, and the way they interacted with him, and with critics and the outside. And that is a thing you can actively do in the way I kind of posited PewDiePie did, but it's also a passive thing that, like, at least with BreadTube, obligatory quotation marks, as with BreadTube, you don't have to do that intentionally. Just the ways that these communities already exist kind of lends them to naturally developing in this certain direction, and so just choosing not to really address that in a meaningful way can also very much result in that. And this is not a video, I want to be clear, this is not a video about cancel culture. This is not a video about the correct way to build a community. I don't know what the right way to build a community is, necessarily. The perfect way to do it. And I don't know everything about cancel culture. But the intention of this video is not to make a broad point about the ways either of those things ought to operate. To me, cancel culture, the way people talk about it is entirely incorrect. That when people talk about it as being a broad, almost systemic problem that people at the top of social hierarchies get criticized by people near the bottom or much lower than they are, as that being a major problem, I think is a little bit ridiculous. It's almost never the case that these people are experiencing any long-term ill effects on their careers. It's almost never the case that any of these people lose their jobs. Alright, I just ate in the middle of recording because I'm a professional. But I definitely, I almost definitely fucked up this shot somehow in the intervening time. I don't know how. And maybe miraculously I didn't, but I feel like I probably did. And I guess this is your opportunity to do the trial run of holding me accountable. Tell me how I fucked up in this shot. Tell me where I got food, please. But, you know, even during the Me Too movement, which everyone and their mom heralded as the end of straight white men as we know it, really failed to actually damage the careers in the long term of a lot of the people it concerned, other than maybe the most high profile individuals. And in cases of cancel culture where it's punching down, where someone is wielding their platform, influence, and fan base to absolutely overwhelm somebody who has none of those kinds of social capital, that's weirdly never talked about by commentary YouTubers, by anyone with the platform to use to actually discuss instances of power and cancel culture being wielded in a way that's negative and that's harmful. And I get why it's done like that, is because it doesn't make a great story when the person who is being just mercilessly attacked is somebody who does not have fans who are going to like you for defending them, who is not somebody who wields a great amount of power and influence that people are going to know who they are. But that's a problem, is those kinds of uses of power. And those are never discussed, even though it is much, much, much more common that in those cases, people actually have their lives ruined by this kind of thing. And so again, this is not a video about cancel culture. I did not set out to make this a video about cancel culture or how to build a community, but I do know that you have to start that community building at the bottom. You have to start it at the beginning in order to get to the place when you do have an audience, that audience will hold you accountable. That's about all I got. This has been me on my video channel on the youtube.com. RealmW, aka Owen. I'll see you next time.